So whatever happens with Nick Foles, we know in Chicago the top two options will be Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, in that order, at least for now. And look, Matt Nagy, I believe, continues to be committed to the Kansas City model from 2017, even though the circumstances are dramatically different.
Yeah.
The equity that the starting quarterback has is dramatically reduced. Andy Dalton has no history with the Bears at all, but Nagy likes the idea, I believe, I've heard this, and this best explains his public comments, he likes the idea of giving Justin Fields time to learn from the number 2 position like Patrick Mahomes did in 2017. Now, is it a full season? Or in Mahomes' case, it was up until a meaningless Week 17 game. But, and we've talked before about looking at the schedule, maybe Week 10 is the sweet spot where Fields takes over, but Nagy seems bound and determined, Chris, to carry Andy Dalton as the starter, not just into training camp, but through training camp, through the preseason, into Week 1 of the regular season, and maybe beyond. And that unless a big curveball is coming or Justin Fields is so dramatically better than Andy Dalton in camp that Nagy can't justify holding Fields down, it's going to be Dalton.
Yeah, no, it's going to be Dalton. To me, it's just a question of whether, does Fields impress enough and have a grasp enough of the offense to maybe infiltrate the lineup or the starting 11 in certain spots early on in the season. To me, that's where it is. See, where it's different a little bit than the Kansas City model, like you're bringing up, is, of course, in Kansas City, we had a team that was in the playoffs and a quarterback that was playing at a pretty high level, especially when it came to stats and quarterback rating and things like that. So I think, and then it was Patrick Mahomes, who nobody knew about really at the time, and he came from Texas Tech. So there wasn't the public push and pressure. It was like, well, we got this gunslinger from Texas Tech that Andy Reid likes. Nobody knew what he was about to be. Flip side to that is it's a little different here. We know what Andy Dalton is. He's not playing to the level that Alex Smith was playing when they drafted Patrick Mahomes. The team itself, I don't think the Bears are at the level the Chiefs were, and many more people, there's more pressure behind the Justin Fields situation. Yes, there's the trade-up, but like we've talked about, he's been, the big guy on campus on the number 2 school in the country, for the last 2 years in a row. So everybody's seen him, and hey, this guy's a star, and when he's on the field, they win. And I think that adds pressure to the situation for the Bears, and I think it's going to lead to more of a clamoring from the fan base and everything like that. And even within the locker room, when Justin Fields shows a little talent, those guys, again, they're going to go, wait, we've seen Andy Dalton. We know what he is. That's cool. That's great. But, man, Fields, he's got something. So I do think training camp can maybe dictate in preseason if he has that package of plays we've talked about a little bit, Mike, maybe early in the year, to at least get him in, get him playing, get him some experience, and get him going that way.
And the Chiefs at least had a history of pretty good quarterbacks dating back to Len Dawson, and they had Joe Montana. Now, apologies to Todd Blackledge, but they have had guys that they can look to and say,
Trent Green,
had some guys who can get it done. The Bears haven't.
Yeah.
The Bears are still desperate for their next Sid Luckman. So I think that's part of it too. It all goes into the blender, and it makes it different, and it does create an anticipation that Fields is going to be the guy. And again, we can't get past the fact that if the locker room is like, what the hell's wrong with Nagy? Why isn't he going with Fields? I think that moves the needle that way as well. It's like Russell Wilson in 2012. People say it was brave for Pete Carroll to go with Wilson over Matt Flynn after they gave Matt Flynn all that money. No, the brave thing would have been to go with Flynn because everyone knew that Wilson was the guy. It was the easy decision for Carroll to make. Here's Fields talking about his own personal timeline, and listen carefully to what he says about help that he's gotten from Andy Dalton.
My job is strictly to get better, be the best quarterback I can be, and help my team win. So that's what I'm going to do, whether it's starting, whether it's sitting. I'm going to do whatever that's going to help us win. So yeah, I've learned a lot of things. I couldn't even name off a few things, but I mean he's talked to me a lot. I actually went to dinner with him and his wife, so we talked a lot there, and kind of just his background and stuff like that, their story, but. I mean, Andy and Nick, they've been awesome to me, probably bigger than you guys even know. yeah. I mean, Andy's completely taking me under his wing. Any question that I have for him, he's going to answer. And then even when I'm throwing, I think there was one day out after OTAs, I was throwing extra after practice, and he stayed out there specifically just to see maybe what I was doing wrong, and he was just trying to help me out. So I mean, he's been a huge help for sure.
Chris, I got to give you credit. Maybe this is the influence that I've had on you in a negative way, but you spotted what was embedded in that last part. The idea that Andy Dalton was spotting things that Justin Fields was doing wrong. I don't know that that's helped, Justin. Maybe a little passive-aggressive, hey, kid, you got a lot to learn. And, hey, kid, maybe you got some stuff in your throwing motion that's a little funky. Like, just look for a picture of Justin Fields throwing the ball. That elbow is aiming sky high, and that's something you've had concerns about for a while.
Right. Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, hey, first off, Justin Fields, he's talented. I want to make this clear, Mike, just because I think people think I'm a hater on him, and I'm not. I'm rooting for him. You can see there, handles himself the right way. Got a good way about him. There's no doubt. It's cool that Andy Dalton's doing that. It really is. Andy Dalton showing like his maturity and he's comfortable where he is in life in the NFL and everything like that. That he's willing to take a guy like that underneath his wing like that to a degree. But yeah, I mean, again, that does worry me. And you're right. Like any picture you bring up with Justin Fields, and I have people all the time try to send me pictures of other quarterbacks and go, oh, look, his elbow's up. And I go, yeah, but they got to that position in a different way. And that's where it's different. It's not start from the elbow and do those things, but nonetheless, it caught my attention, because there has to be that concern, or at least that work going on behind the scenes with Justin Fields to clean that up. Well, listen, I'm not like a know-it-all, but I mean, anybody you talk to in football had a little concern about Justin Fields' motion and his mechanics and throwing, so that has to be worked on. Andy Dalton is pretty consistent, not going to wow you with everything he does throwing the football, but he does have pretty good mechanics, never been like totally inaccurate, has control of the football. I'm sure he can point him in the right direction and give him a few things to think about. It's just going to be, can they beat these things out of him, these bad habits? And I doubt they can do that by the start of like this season. But if he continues to work on it, maybe by year 2, it can be gone by the wayside and he can kind of readjust his motion altogether.
And I still continue to wonder whether or not changes can be made. To something that a guy has been doing his whole life. I remember that Tim Tebow, that was the first time in the 20 years, and it was about 10 years ago that I've been doing this for a living, that it crystallized. You got a guy who's obsessed with changing his throwing motion because his prior motion, and it was different because his took too long for the ball to get out. Fields can still whip it.
Yes, he can.
It's just that elbow, as you've said, it messes up accuracy because you're working through it, and it's not smooth, it's not efficient. But even though he does get through it fast, Tebow had that long catapult, hold the ball down near the ground, and it just gives the defensive backs extra time to see what's coming. And the narrative prior to the 2010 draft was he's changing his motion, and everything he did, it was a different motion, and then he went out and played, and it was the old motion. You can't forget what you've always done once the switch is on and you're in the middle of it and you're just going on instinct. Your instinct hasn't changed. You can say, I'm doing it this way over and over again. You go out in a game and you're going to do it the way you've always done it.
It is really, I mean, you're right. And I'm not arguing against you. Most people can't adjust the way they throw or do those things. Natural ones can. People who are naturally gifted throwers, they can tweak and change the motion over time. Justin Fields, I do think, has enough natural aspect to break some of these habits. But it's one of those things, Mike, like you're talking about here, just to hammer home that point. This is something, hey, this is what the Sims family does. We worked with a lot of quarterbacks, college, NFL, high school, whatever. And when a guy really has a technical flaw, usually my father is going to say something like, hey, when the season's over, you need to kind of come see us like within the first 2 weeks. It can't be like we're going to start diving into this to May. We got to start like in January, and we're going to have to like get the new mechanics and techniques down, and we're going to have to get 10 to 15,000 reps doing it, because that's the only way you're going to beat it into your brain to make it second nature, to where it doesn't go revert back to the old motion, to like you're talking about, Mike, because that's what does happen. And that's where, it's going to be critical. So I don't know how much he can change right now. He can tweak and stay on some things, but, hopefully after the offseason, he can work on it even more and continue to grow and kind of clean up some of these issues we talk about.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.